33 years ago, in 2025, a forgotten installation in the Mojave Desert came back online, without authorization, without power, and without warning. What followed changed everything we thought we understood about deep space telemetry, and about time itself. Welcome back to Signals Uncovered. I'm Michael Reynolds. For nearly 2 decades, we've traced pirate transmissions from orbit, mirrored data leaks bouncing off forgotten satellites, and even that Soviet repeater that accidentally broadcast whale song across the Atlantic. But of all the strange anomalies I've covered, this one wasn't just another mystery. It was the most consequential signal ever recorded. Not only because of where it came from, but because the physics didn't make sense. Feedback loops without a source, time signatures that contradicted themselves, a system speaking before it was ever activated. It all started here, in the Nevada desert, a classified Cold War facility known as the Whisper Array, built under a telemetry program designed to listen, never transmit. Staffed by analysts, engineers, and cryptologists who spent their careers eavesdropping on silence. When the funding dried up, the site was decommissioned in 1984. Its coordinates deleted from active defense maps. The hardware, which was thought to be obsolete, remained. The power was cut. Nothing moved out here except the wind. For nearly 40 years, this compound sat sealed beneath the desert sun. Inside that concrete structure, a control room, 2 archive vaults, and a sub-level power relay built on military-grade redundancy. The array's core was analog, banks of reel recorders and magnetic tape storage that were never upgraded. Even after decommissioning, some systems kept their integrity. Insulated lines still carried residual current from the backup cells buried beneath the floor. The technicians who designed it assumed the world would end in radio noise, not silence, so they overbuilt everything. The dishes themselves were a hybrid design, each one 20 meters across, tuned for deep space telemetry. Their rotation drives were meant to withstand sandstorms and nuclear EMP. When the station was shut down, they simply locked in position, facing the last coordinates they were tracking. And then, last spring, one of those drives re-engaged. At 10:37 a.m., power returned to a system that had been disconnected for 40 years. The fluorescents stuttered to life, gauges twitched. Analog needles settled into position. Tape decks in the archive vault below began to rewind themselves, their motors catching after decades of silence. The first surge registered in the subfloor capacitor bank, hardware built in the 70s, never designed to hold a charge this long. Relays snapped in sequence, just as they had during live operations, one after another, like a mechanical heartbeat coming back online. Lights engaged one by one. The consoles began to cycle through diagnostics, and then the monitors booted as if someone was sitting there. The old Hewlett-Packard receivers spun up their cooling fans. Spectrum analyzers traced faint ghost lines across blue CRTs. Even the internal security cameras reinitialized, capturing every second of the sequence you're seeing now. The reels that recorded it were sealed inside the mainframe cabinet, untouched until investigators recovered them months later. No operator, no external trigger, just an empty room, remembering how to wake itself. There was one person on record who witnessed the array's return to life, Elizabeth Marlow, a government cryptologist who later worked as a contractor for Stratnet, decommissioning abandoned telemetry sites like this one. She had the gate code, but the building itself stayed locked and powerless. There were rumors of classified experiments, something conducted here in the mid-80s that was never officially declassified. Her mother was part of that final team, the one that shut the array down for good. She lost her mother young, Her father, also a systems engineer, stopped speaking not long after. People said he just couldn't bear to talk about what happened. Elizabeth learned to live in the quiet spaces between words. She called it listening for the noise inside silence. She was born 10 years after the array went dark, and she turned 30 the day it woke up. Within hours of the array's unexpected activation, Stratnet dispatched a field team to secure the site. Stratnet was the government's quiet contractor for telemetry decommissioning, the group responsible for closing old listening posts after the Cold War. Elizabeth Marlow had been working for them at the time. Weeks after the event, Stratnet conducted a classified debrief, a calm, methodical attempt to explain the impossible. What you're about to hear is the first airing of a recovered segment from that interview. Archived, then sealed. Until now.
State your name and assignment for the record.
Elizabeth Marlow, civilian contractor, Stratnet Systems, Signal Decommissioning Division, assigned to verify post-closure status of telemetry arrays under government contract.
The Whisper Array. When did you last visit prior to the incident?
Roughly 2 months earlier, I began visiting on my own time. Except for the gate, the building, the systems were always dark, with power disconnected. The interior doors were locked and I couldn't get inside, but I was drawn there for a few months prior to the incident. I can't explain it. Sometimes I slept in my car.
Describe what you observed on May 23rd.
At 10:37 a.m., I arrived that day. It was my birthday. My mom used to work inside, and I just felt like I needed to be there. As soon as I drove through the gate, something happened. The access door unlocked. The building was active. By the time I went inside, several systems were already online. No operator input. It wasn't me, I swear it. Diagnostics were cycling in loops that shouldn't have been possible without external command. Voltage levels fluctuated briefly, then stabilized. The systems began holding power, as if they'd found equilibrium.
You reported that you heard something?
Yes, it was not a voice, a rhythm. At first, I thought it was electrical interference, but it carried a pattern, a measured pulse beneath the static. It reminded me of breathing.
And the monitors?
They cycled through legacy code, fragments from the original operating scripts. Then one console displayed my ID tag, my full name, time-stamped to that minute. The system wasn't connected to any external network. It shouldn't have known I was there.
What did Stratnet determine afterward?
Before the first response team arrived, one of the consoles transmitted a short burst, a repeating pulse that matched the array's original handshake pattern. They traced it to Deep Space Channel 12. There's nothing out there on that frequency. The signal hasn't stopped since.
Thank you, Ms. Marlow, for your time.
What Stratnet didn't release, what no one outside the lab saw, was what happened when that signal repeated itself. For decades, what happened at the Whisper Array was treated as an anomaly, a moment that began the age of listening and ended it just as quickly. But 30 years later, we're learning it never really ended. It changed form. It went silent. It waited. And when the Stratnet archives were released, we finally saw how much we had missed. What was sealed inside Stratnet's servers was never meant to be opened again. But on May 23, 2058, it did. automatically. No breach. No hacker. Just activity. A dormant node reconnecting itself to the public net. Within minutes, the first fragment began to copy across open networks. A complete Stratnet archive tagged Channel 12. Inside the data was the original waveform, except now it was alive. By nightfall, the story had already escaped. Not through officials or press briefings, but through listeners. In chat feeds and forums it spread. Waveform screenshots, checksum strings, panic, denial, awe.
Channel 12.
Analysts in 3 countries confirmed the same signature, the array handshake pattern identical to the original 2025 recording. Channel 12 was transmitting again. And somewhere in that noise was something new, a data structure no one recognized, looping every 12 minutes on the dot.
If you're just joining, we're tracking a signal that hasn't broadcast in 33 years. They're calling it the Whisper Array Return. I'm telling you, it never stopped. It just went quiet. The pattern you're seeing on screen is live, not a replay, not a loop. Origin trace puts it somewhere in the southwest desert grid, same coordinates as the array. Whatever they heard back then, it's talking again. And this time, we're all hearing it together.
When the noise faded, what remained was the data. In the weeks that followed, every packet, every checksum, every trace of the Stratnet recovery was verified. What no one could explain was why the pattern kept repeating. To understand what happened, Stratnet released the recovered telemetry to civilian researchers. 2 of the people who led that work would spend years untangling the fragments: Professor Alan Mercer and Dr. Lena Voss.
We weren't studying the transmission itself. We were studying its memory. Every file carried timestamps out of sequence, as if information had been copied backward. The deeper we traced it, the clearer it became. The signal was referencing data that shouldn't have existed yet.
At first, we assumed interference, but the checksum patterns were too deliberate. The telemetry grid showed a fixed return angle, as if something in orbit were reflecting the array's own output. Except the return vector wasn't there. There was nothing to reflect from.
Mercer called it temporal resonance. Voss called it feedback across causality. Different language, same problem. The Whisper Array wasn't just listening, it was hearing itself from somewhere else in time. The Whisper Array was built to listen for signals from the stars. It fell silent for 40 years, then came back online without human command. One witness, Elizabeth Marlow, recorded what she saw. Her voice was sealed by Stratnet and forgotten, until the archives woke themselves decades later. And now evidence suggests the signal isn't reaching out at all. It's returning from the stars. In the next part of this investigation, we'll follow the recovered fragments across systems, decades, and impossible distances. From the mirror storm to the shattered relay. From a black box echo to a city divided by a single moment in time. Because somewhere within those signals, something was answering back. And what it said changes everything we thought we understood about the Whisper Array.